And today I'm going to be talking a little bit more about how to combat triggers and a technique that you can use when you're trying to deal with triggers. All right, so there's a lot of different ways, right, to define a trigger. It could be a stimulus, right? So a lot of times a trigger is what starts a reaction to happen, right? So it can be this starting point, right? Like you see a pizza and it's like, oh, that's a trigger, right? Or it could be something positive too. You can see, like your running shoes and be like, oh, I want to go for a run. So a lot of times a trigger can just start to get the ball rolling. It can also be a flashback, right? Like a memory of something can be a trigger, right? You can remember how you used to go out for ice cream every time you got an A. And so, that can be a trigger. Like anytime I do something good, oh, I get to go have ice cream because that's my reward for it. It's also an activation point. So it's what starts a lot of the things that start happening, right? So we see something and then we take an action about it. It can also be a reaction to something that's happening with us, right? So once again, we might see a cookie and the reaction, that trigger, that reaction is to go ahead and eat the cookie instead of just passing by it or sharing that cookie or just saying, no, thank you, I don't want to deal with it. And then a trigger can also just be a reminder. So it can help you, remember something good that happened in your life, something bad that happened in your life. Right? You may, see, like you used to be a runner in high school, and so you see like your medals or something, and that triggers you to motivates you to want to run again. Or you may see birthday cake, and it reminds you of your 10th birthday and how much fun that was, and so every time you see birthday cake, you want to go ahead and have a slice so that you can remember again what that was like. Right, so some of the benefits of addressing our triggers. Right, it can help us overcome obstacles, right? So a lot of times triggers get in the way of us achieving our goals or any of our action plans that we set in, right? And so a lot of times if we can address these triggers, we can then go ahead and get over that hump and just keep going and moving forward and achieving our goals. It can also aid in habit change, right? So a lot of times these triggers just kind of get in the way, as I mentioned. And so if you're able to address them and get rid of them, then you're able to make a change that's gonna last, weeks, months, years. And also addressing triggers gives us a lot of freedom, right? So we're able to not have to think about a situation in the same exact way. If cookies are a trigger for us, and they're no longer become a trigger, now you have that freedom. You can see a cookie and walk by it. You can, just not be interested in it, whereas before you may want to eat every single cookie you see. So the method that we're going to be looking at today, this is a method that kind of explains triggers and how they're built. So there's 3 parts to a trigger. It's the cue, the routine, and the reward. So the cue, that's the spark. That's what starts everything going, right? And so this can be an event, right? Like Thanksgiving is a cue, or a birthday party is a cue. It could be a place, like every time I'm at the movie theater, I want to go grab popcorn. Whether I want it or not, it's still that spark that makes me want to do it. It can be a person, like every time I go see my sister, we have to go get coffee. Or every time I see my best friend, we have to meet over pizza. Right? So it can be also a feeling, an emotional thing. When you're sad, when you're lonely, you're tired, you're angry. All of those can be cues. And that's just what starts and ignites the whole trigger. The second part of it is the routine. So that's what we actually do, the action that we take. So this cue is the thing that starts it, and the routine is what we do in order to fulfill that cue, right? So we eat ice cream, or we smoke a cigarette, or when we're tired, we go and we sit down on the couch. That's the action that we're taking. And then the reward is that the satisfaction that we get from that routine. So it's that feeling, right? That happy feeling after we ate the ice cream, or it's the social connection, right? You talk to someone on the phone, and so now you're happy because you connected with that person. You know, you're very stressed, and after you had that cigarette, now you're not as stressed as you were before. So that reward is what we're searching for, right? Like as humans, we want to get that gratification. We want to be able to feel satisfied and happy with it. And that's ultimately what we're looking for, is this reward. So I want to go ahead and look at an example of how this comes into play as a trigger. And as we're going through this, I want you to start thinking about your own triggers, some of the things that you may have seen, any patterns that you tend to find in your own daily life. So I have here, when I am bored, I eat because it gives me something to do. And I know I'm the only person who does this. None of you have ever done this before. It's just me. I'm aware of that. So the cue in this case, right, that spark that starts everything, that's boredom. And so that is the thing that's going to start everything else happening. So the routine, the action that we're taking is to eat, right? So I want to eat every time that I get bored. The reward for that is that I'm no longer bored, right? So the end result, while I'm eating, I'm doing something, so I'm no longer bored. And so that's satisfying me because it's curing me of the cue that I had, the boredom that I had. And so what we need to do here when we're trying to figure out what to do with triggers is see if there's a way or a method to switch out that routine, that action that we're taking, into another action that is gonna help you achieve your goals a lot better. And so for this example that I have here, I'm using the same thing here. When I am bored, I go for a walk because it gives me something to do. So that cue, that spark is still gonna be boredom. That's still the thing that's happening. However, the routine now, the action that I'm taking is to go for a walk, right? So that's been switched out. And my reward is still that I'm no longer bored, right? Because going for that walk has taken care of the fact that I'm no longer bored. So by just switching out the action that I'm taking, I'm still benefiting from that reward that I was searching for, you know, and I'm still getting what it is that I wanted out of the thing. I'm just switching out that little action that I'm taking. And by the way, I'm not saying that like you should always go for a walk and you eat. Like that's going to change from person to person, right? For some people, it may be, you know, I'm going to read a book, or I'm going to have a glass of water. I'm going to talk to a friend. You know, there's many different actions that you can swap out on the routine portion of it in order to still get that reward. Because essentially what our brains want is the reward. The routine part isn't as important to our brains. It's that reward, it's that satisfaction that we're going to get out of it. And so a lot of times when we try to deal with triggers, and what most often goes wrong is we do something like this example here, right? I am bored, I will not eat, right? We just tell ourselves we're going to eliminate this action that we're taking, right? Call it willpower, call it strength, whatever word you want to use for it. But we just decide we're not going to do this thing. So let's break that down a little bit. So the cue is still boredom, right? We're still bored. That's still what's sparking everything. The routine is that the action that we're going to take now is that we're not going to eat. But what happens to the reward, right? There's no reward in that. We get no satisfaction from not eating. And so you're left still trying to figure out that reward part. Our brains are still trying to figure out what is the reward in not eating. And a lot of times what ends up happening is we just keep seeking it out and keep seeking out this action to take, you know, until we find that reward. And that's why it can be a little bit tricky when we just try to eliminate something without trying to substitute it, because we're not going to be able to get that reward out of it. All right, so I hope all of you started thinking about a trigger. So now we're going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to be sending everybody into breakout rooms, so in little small groups in pairs.